Welcome back to The Journey We Take. I'm your host, Janelli here, and today we will be unpacking a little phrase that I feel like has followed me most of my life. And that little phrase is ignorance is bliss. So, firstly, I feel like when I heard this at the time, I think I was thinking I had it all figured out. Like, knowledge equals freedom, right? And awareness is technically power. But as I've gotten older and have gone through more things in life, I've realized that there's much more nuance to it. Sometimes ignorance really does feel like bliss, at least for a moment. And that's kind of what I want to explore with you guys today. A lot of the time when I hear that ignorance is bliss, I think back to when we are small children and how easy it is, to live in our own little bubbles at that age. No anxiety about the future, no worrying about if we're doing enough. We just plainly exist, just laugh and dream and just exist. And so it makes me wonder, when did we start believing that awareness always has to come with heaviness? Because lately I've been thinking a lot about, this idea that, around the comfort of not knowing. Maybe you've thought ignorance is bliss was just an excuse for people who didn't want to grow at times. I've seemed to think that myself sometimes, like, no, I want to know. I want to be self-aware, enlightened, involved, whatever. But then, life has a way of humbling you. And so I realize sometimes ignorance really does feel like bliss, but not the kind where you're in denial, but the kind where just for a moment you're not carrying the entire world in your mind. Just going back to being a child for a moment, before we learn about heartbreak or deadlines or even the taxes that we have to pay. Damn taxes. But, our joy, it just runs freely, wild, and it's just unburdened. All of this happiness and laughter, is untouched by what awaits beyond the horizon. So I see it with my stepson in ways. How he finds joy in simple things like shooting hoops outside and laughing with our dog Nardi and getting excited about things at school. I feel like having kids in our lives definitely gives us this beautiful reminder and just a blessing of what it's like to see the world unfiltered, not necessarily ignorant in this case, just again, untouched by all the heaviness that comes with growing up. As we grow, that awareness creeps in, and suddenly that's when life starts to feel heavier and we start craving comfort, routine, and that sometimes not knowing. We will turn off the news, we'll scroll past the things that just make us feel uncomfortable and pretend certain realities aren't there. Just, constantly chasing that childlike bliss in these small ways. And I totally get it. I really do. I think deep down, we do just all have this natural tendency to try so hard to hold on to that childlike bliss, and we chase it in different ways, whether through the distractions we feed ourselves or avoidances. Maybe, it could be in the vacations we're taking without even financially being, really able to, or like, again, mindlessly scrolling, pretending that we didn't just see that one thing online that made us feel a little uneasy or whatnot. It just looks different for all of us. Yet the root of the reasoning is consistent. We will choose silence over truth sometimes, and that temporary peace over awareness, because I guess like we're tired, and maybe because awareness comes with a cost. And once you see something, you can't necessarily unsee it. And again, back to that is, when you're seeing something, you tend to begin to understand it in a different way, or you will understand it in a different way eventually. And when that happens, it changes you. But the thing is that the comfort of not knowing isn't the same as peace. It's just temporary. It's like standing in the shade on a hot day and you feel relief for a moment, but not sunlight. So, there's this moment right after the realization where you almost wish you could go back and you wish you could unknow things, but you can't. And that, I feel like when you get through it is where the growth actually happens. It's this whole subject, it just takes me back to 8th grade actually. My teacher, Mr. Brazel, in his class, we had to write about this topic, ignorance is bliss, and whether we were on the side of if it was or wasn't. And yeah, so truly this is what sparked up this episode's topic, and I think what continuously influence the way that I try and see the world and all sides of it in our given circumstances, our position and outlook. I was probably 14 or 15, pencil in hand, overthinking everything like only a middle schooler could, with too much curiosity. And well, most of my classmates were probably writing something silly like ignorance is bliss because I don't want to know what my math grade is or something along those lines. I was just trying to wrestle with the philosophy of it all. I remember wanting to explore both sides, and just talk about how ignorance could feel like bliss and how it could also rob us of something essential. Looking back, I see now that, that instinct to question and to try and see all perspectives has always been with me. Even then, I wanted to understand life in all of its contradictions. There's a little comfort in this memory too. Again, like a reminder that this curiosity isn't new. It's just part of who I am as a person. And I think that's part of the journey for us all, is just seeing how even the small reflections that we have as kids can echo into our adulthood and, unfold in different ways. And it's, comforting to know that that was always within me, and probably why I'm talking here to you guys on this podcast today. But going back to it, awareness isn't always easy. Like I said before, once you see something, you can't unsee it. And then once you understand it, it changes you. And sometimes that change can be uncomfortable, can be painful at times, depending on the circumstances. And then you find yourself wishing that you could just go back to before then, before you knew, that bubble of not knowing, and that shade where life felt lighter and where you didn't feel like you had to carry the weight of disappointment, heartbreak, or whatever the complicated truth may be. I'm pretty sure we have all had moments like that, times when we have discovered something about someone we love or even about ourselves. And maybe we felt that sharp sting of reality hit all at once. I feel like the first instinct probably is to typically hide and avoid the truth, just pretend it didn't happen, or distract yourself with anything that could drown out that new, unwelcomed knowledge. And sometimes that truth comes from friendships that you thought were maybe solid, the ones that you believe would never hurt you. I remember realizing that I had a friend I trusted for years, in subtle ways starting to undermine me and, gossip behind my back. The younger years of, certain relationships and friends displaying their loyalty only behind closed doors and not actively supporting in public. But, at first I wanted to excuse me. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to convince myself I was overreacting because facing it kind of hurt, Facing it meant acknowledging that someone I cared for wasn't actually acting with care for me. But eventually the truth set me free, and that's kind of the core message here. Because once I saw what was really happening, I had a choice. I could continue to pretend and stay in that shade that I'm trying to use metaphorically in these terms and just let, that relationship silently erode my confidence and mostly like my peace of mind. Or I could step into the light and acknowledge the reality, don't hide from it, and just take action. And I chose the latter. And it doesn't feel good at first. A lot of the time that's the case, but ultimately it will, because you realize just how freeing that is. There's actually this quote I saw that I kind of love, and it's, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. I don't really know who to attribute that to, but I feel like it's so true. Truth is rarely convenient. It's a lot of the time messy, and it forces you to examine things that you'd rather ignore. But the peace that comes after is like no other. That's the kind of peace that you can trust. That kind that just doesn't waver whenever life gets heavy. Because the crucial part, I think, is just, ignorance isn't the same as peace. And peace doesn't mean avoiding what's real. It doesn't mean covering your eyes or pretending, the heartache, the storm, whatever you want to reference it as isn't coming. But peace is choosing calm even in the middle of truth and facing reality without letting it actually break you. And trust me, I say that as someone who has definitely tried to run from uncomfortable truths before, but that never works. The truth always catches up to you, sometimes in a more graceful way, sometimes like, you get knocked over and it just comes crashing down at you. But the only difference is whether you meet them head on or let them crash over you. So I feel like facing them might sting at first, but it's the only way that you grow. And I think the irony with all that is that once you allow yourself to truly see, you realize that so much of life isn't as heavy as you thought. Like the awareness you feared so much, actually, it gives you depth and clarity and even joy after you break through. And you just have to survive that first wave of discomfort to get there. I like to think we live in a time where, all these overwhelming moments can strip us away of peace. And so that part of us that we all have that longs for this childlike ignorance again is not because we want to feel, or not because we want to be naive, but just we want to feel safe. But the real safety, the kind that lasts, just comes from being aware and grounded, and from knowing what's real, but not letting it consume you. If you know what I mean. From just like understanding the world, but still holding on to your softness. Don't let the world harden you, because it will always try to do that. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges in everyone's life, is to allow our experiences to teach us, but not change us in ways that make us callous. We live in a time, like I said before, where there's just so much information and we know everything that's happening everywhere all at once, and it can be overwhelming sometimes, and just how we process it all really dictates the direction and quality of our lives. And when we face it with awareness, I think that's the best way to go about how we want to choose to process those said things and challenges in life. But on a philosophical perspective, since I always like to throw that into these episodes, I'm really big on Plato, and I know that once he compared ignorance to being trapped in a cave and mistaking shadows for reality. I like to imagine cave chairs, and they're probably comfy, right? but blissfully unaware seating. Because once the light pours in, you can't go back. The shadows lose their magic. That illusion collapses. And, the truth ruins the show, but it also frees you. And that's why I think bliss based ignorance is fragile. And it's honestly fleeting. And the real lasting fulfillment comes from just embracing awareness, even when it's uncomfortable. Whenever I was writing that 8th grade assignment, I recall referencing this situation where someone was being kept in the dark about someone that they love with a terminal illness, or maybe it was them, but it was meant as protection, them not being aware of this terminal illness, but really it robbed them of saying goodbye or finishing their story on their own terms. And so in that situation, ignorance wasn't bliss, it was theft. And that's the thing about not knowing. Sometimes it protects and sometimes it steals. Even as adults, we have to learn that the world will give us these shadows, but it also offers sunlight. And sometimes stepping into that sunlight and awareness hurts, but it teaches us who we really are and how strong we are and how capable of compassion we can be. And yeah, sometimes the weight of knowing is heavy, and sometimes we wish we could stay in the shade forever, but the freedom that comes from facing reality is what makes life actually meaningful. That said, not every truth needs chasing immediately. I think life has a timing to it, and sometimes our brains just block out what we're not ready to handle, and that's okay. Maybe the art of living is just knowing when to face that reality and just when to rest in not knowing, and to know that the unknown isn't necessarily the enemy. Sometimes it's just the part of the story that hasn't yet come into fruition and it hasn't unfolded yet for us. For me, I think the key has just simply been learning to embrace awareness with grace and to know the truth, but not to let it harden me back to that again, because I think that's the most important. Just to hold life's realities gently and still make space for all the wonder and joy that it has to offer. So I think maybe ignorance isn't bliss. It's just awareness with compassion. I don't know. I think I'm still torn on like a set response on it. I see all through the perspectives. So I think, yeah, maybe it's just awareness with compassion. The kind that just deepens your joy instead of steals it, and the kind that softens you instead of it hardens you. Because life isn't about avoiding those shadows that I referenced in this podcast, and that being ignorance. It's about standing in the light of knowledge, the light of awareness, and learning to just bend with life, not break. So yeah, if you're listening and thinking about a truth maybe that you've been avoiding, and maybe it's just a conversation or just simply a reality you don't want to face, maybe it's time to see what's really there. Not because it will be easy, but because it's necessary for growth. And facing it doesn't mean losing your peace. It just means that you're reclaiming your power. I think that we are capable of holding awareness and peace at the same time. It's up to us. You know how messy the world can be, but we can still choose to love it. And that's where I think the bliss is. It's not in ignorance, but in the courage that we all contain. So yeah, thank you for listening to my little rant on ignorance and bliss. And I'd like to hear what you guys have to say about it. Do you believe ignorance is bliss? Do you believe in, having awareness in that being another source of bliss if we use it to our advantage, in shifting that frame of mind and seeing it for what it really is, the truth? Anyway, if this episode resonated with you, you can share it with maybe someone else who might need a little gentle reminder, that the truth sets you free. And I think that is one of the bravest things we can do, is still to get to see the truth, even knowing it might disrupt our comfort for a little bit at first, but you won't have those chains of ignorance binding you. So you can escape into reality and really live it to the fullest in the truth of the light, whatever you want to call it. I'm not gonna lie, I've had a really long week and I'm really tired, so a lot of this episode I feel like was really ranty, so my apologies, but I hope you catch the gist of where I was going with this. Anyway, would love to hear your comments, and if you're liking the Journey We Take podcast, I would love it if you could just show it some love. Maybe leave it a review, maybe like on whatever platform you're listening on right now. I'm really thankful for you guys taking the time out of your day just to listen to your girl just wanting to share her peace of mind and, touch others in ways that I feel like may be helpful for them. And yeah, it just makes me really happy and fulfilled knowing that this is reaching some people that are actually taking some value from the words. I think words are powerful. I'm sure I've said it in past episodes, but I think that our ability to use them is almost a superpower. And I'm really grateful for this platform and for the opportunity to share my mind and my heart with others around the world. So again, thank you guys. Until next time, take care of your mind, protect your peace, and just stay open to the lessons that life keeps offering us. I'll catch you guys on the next one.